everyone, we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to Blueprint Career Services Blueprint Panel Discussion. Today's topic is the financial sector. So people are slowly coming into joining us today, and we're going to begin. So we're just going to let a few more people in, and we'll just move to the next slide. Great. So first, I'm just going to do a quick access check. Please let us know in the chat if you can hear me. Can you see the presentation clearly? Are there any other access needs that might affect your participation? Thank you. As you can see, this session is being recorded and it will be shared on our website. So if there is something that you missed or you'd like to review it again, or if there are accessibility challenges, there is the option to review this panel on our website. I'm first going to do a very important land acknowledgement. If I can just go back to the slide before, Carla. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it's been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Now I'd like to review some very simple housekeeping. So please remember, keep your cameras and your mics off during the presentation. Post your questions and comments in the chat. Questions will be responded to at the end of the moderated question portion. And please complete the brief survey at the end of the presentation. And as I mentioned before, this session is being recorded and it will be posted on our Blueprint Career Services portal. Thank you. And so I'd like to take the opportunity to now briefly introduce myself and what we do here at Blueprint Career Services, in addition to our amazing panels. So my name is Ann Park. I'm the career strategist here at Blueprint Career Services. And the fact that all of you are here with us today and participating in this panel on the finance sector, it demonstrates to me that one thing that all of you have in common is that you are driven in your career and you're interested in furthering your career through finding out more information about this very lucrative sector and connecting and networking with industry experts. And so I would have to say that along with this drive for being here and furthering your career, it's likely that as you navigate your career, you might have some common challenges along the way. One of them might be that, for example, you recognize that networking is very important to furthering your career, but you don't know how to do it. And you don't have the self-confidence necessary to identify your strengths and market them to employers. You might find yourself applying to hundreds of jobs and only receiving maybe 2 or 3 responses. And you're hearing about this thing called the hidden job market, but you don't know how to access it and you don't know what the next steps are. Or you might be going through some kind of a career transition and you're perhaps looking to further your career in the field that you're in right now, but you don't know how to move forward and what the next steps are. Well, our services, including Clifton Strengths Workshop, in which participants would complete an assessment, which would identify their top 5 strengths, and we would discuss how to market these strengths. The Career Wayfinding series, which is an amazing workshop series, which teaches participants the design thinking process to design your ideal career, and our Career Nav one-on-one career strategist sessions with none other than me can help you to provide you with the support that you need to achieve your career goals. Now, just in all self-disclosure, one of the reasons why I feel so passionate about what we do at Blueprint Career Services and the services that we provide is because I myself have not had a straight and narrow career path. I've had contract jobs, been in precarious employment positions. I've been in careers and jobs that just weren't the right fit for me. But one thing I learned along the way was that it was essential for me to get the right support and talk to the right people in order for me to get where I needed to get to and achieve these career goals, which some people have told me, oh, this is impossible, you can't do it. But I kept going at it, and I met with the right people, and I reached out for support as needed. So sign up for our additional incredible offerings here at Blueprint Career Services and get the support that you need to achieve your career goals. For more information, you can contact our email address here. You can ask for Anne, you already know me, or you can go back to the Blueprint Career Services portal and register for one of our amazing offerings. So now I have the honor of introducing our incredible panelists today. And first, I'd like to introduce Maria Bogusz. She's an associate portfolio manager with the asset allocation team. Maria is responsible for fund of funds portfolio management support, as well as tactical and strategic asset allocation investment analysis relating to the firm's multi-asset strategies. Prior to her current role, Maria was a manager of North American equities with TD Wealth, where she was a portfolio manager and investment committee member for the TD Core Managed Equity Portfolios. Maria holds a BMath in actuarial science with the minor in economics from the University of Waterloo. Let's welcome Maria Bogusz. Thanks,
Hi,
Maria.
everyone.
Hi, everyone. Yes, thanks. Thanks for doing that, Maria. Thanks, Maria. Next, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelist, Michael Holinka. Well, after a decade in the securities industry with companies ranging from Marathon Discount Brokerage to Standard Life HSBC Securities, Michael transitioned to become a full-time professor in 2000. He has a tenured position with George Brown College and developed and runs the Passing the Canadian Securities course and Passing the CFA examination programs for the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies. In addition to teaching, he has co-written 2 best-selling books, Follow Your Money and Follow Your Stuff, and released a solo effort, Stalled, Jump-Starting the Canadian Economy. He lives in downtown Toronto with his wife, Jane, and son, Wyatt. Let's welcome Michael Holinka.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. And last but not least, we have our wonderful panelist, Wei Yang. Wei is a seasoned and pragmatic leader in business technology transformation with a strong background in consulting, modernization, and change management. Her expertise lies in product development, strategic management, business analysis, and program project governance, particularly within the financial services sector, focusing on capital markets and wealth management. Currently, she serves as a director at Scotiabank, where she plays a leadership role in shaping global wealth management product strategy. In her previous roles, Wei managed global capital markets, engineering, and consulting teams, focusing on large-scale business platform modernization. Wei holds an MBA from the Rotman School of Management, specializing in consulting, strategy, and change management. She also earned a bachelor's degree in finance from the University of Toronto and is a certified financial risk manager, FRM. I'd like to welcome our esteemed panelist, Wei, today.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Wei. Thank you so much for that. Great. So now let's get into the moderated question portion of today's panel. And so I'm going to start by asking a question to everyone, and I'll let you know who I'd like to start with first. No particular preference who I see on the screen. So Michael, I see you first. So it's no preference, but I'd like to hear from you, Michael, and find out your story. How did you get started in the financial sector? What has been your career trajectory up to this point? We'd love to hear your story.
Well, I really blundered into it. So like Wei, graduated with a master's degree in business administration from the University of Toronto. I achieved my MBA in 1986, and I started developing property. And there was a tremendous property boom, a commercial property boom in Toronto in the late 1980s, and then this incredible crash. And I wasn't going to be doing property at that point. I had plans that what I would be doing is I would be spending my life as a full-time writer. And I have written a couple of books and done some other things, but I thought it would make my career doing that. I got a job because writing freelance is very hit and miss in terms of getting work. I got a job as a supervisor at a telemarketing outfit, and they asked me if I wanted to do the Canadian Securities course, and I really didn't know what that was. And I did it, and then I started learning about the stock market, and I realized that it is what I should have been doing all of my life. So I got very lucky. I blundered into my profession in my mid 30s, and I wish I would have found it when I was a teenager.
Thanks, Michael. So it's interesting that the career journey that you've taken, that it wasn't your intention to be doing what you're doing now. You kind of stumbled into it, but you realized after getting into it that this was really where you're meant to be. But I can certainly argue that, your story is indicative of what a lot of people go through, right? I think that so many of us are taught that you have to decide exactly what you're going to do for the rest of your life when you go into university, right? Or college, or you go into post-secondary, and then that's it. But it's not like that. A lot of us might decide that we want to do something, and we go to school or we try it out in various ways, or we work in the industries, and we realize, okay, it's not the right fit. But it's just the way it is. But I would also like to add that you're having that kind of that background, not just going right into finance, has really contributed to the work that you've done. So that's amazing. Thank you, Michael.
Well, thank you. That's
Maria.
very kind.
Oh, no problem. Maria, I'd love to hear your story. How did you get started in the financial sector, and what's your career trajectory been up to this point?
Yeah, so thanks, Anne. I would say that my career trajectory also has been a little bit non-conventional. I went to university, to the University of Waterloo to do my actuarial science degree. And through the University of Waterloo program, I had the opportunity to do co-ops. Through my co-op terms, I very quickly discovered that I did not have a passion for actuarial science and insurance, but rather that my passion sort of lay more with the capital markets. So with each progressive co-op term, I tried to sort of position myself closer to the capital markets. So my co-op terms included anything from positions at the Ministry of Finance in Ottawa to working within investor relations for a gold company, Barrick Gold Corporation. After graduation, I ended up landing in a full-time role within the Treasury Department at Barrick Gold. And from there, I was given the opportunity to look at various asset classes, whether that was like precious metals, FX. Definitely, it was a position where I had to keep a pulse on the markets. And after a few years in that position, I decided to move on to equity research on the sell side at Haywood Securities, where I covered precious or helped an analyst cover precious and base metals companies. Further to that, and I think this is a transition for a lot of people, I wanted to make the transition from the sell side or equity research to the buy side or investment management. I ended up working within the TD Wealth team. It's a team currently known as Wealth Investment Office. And within that team, I help manage North American equity portfolios. After several years there, I moved on to TD Asset Management, and I have been part of the multi-asset portfolio management team there for the last 2 years.
Thank you so much, Maria. I appreciate the opportunity to hear your story. And some of the information, or some very useful information I picked up from your story that stood out to me at least, was that how co-op really helped you to make some career decisions. So you thought that you're going to be going into one particular area of your career, and you did this co-op, and you realize it's not for you. But you also recognize through that experience that these co-ops were an opportunity for you to get that hands-on experience in an industry that you would maybe would be a better fit for you, and it worked out. So I think that it's just a reminder to us, for those of us who are in career transition or even considering going back to school full time, the effectiveness of trying it on, like trying a career on, whether it's through co-op or through placement or through volunteering. But that really gives you an opportunity to find out if it's the right fit for you, instead of just basing your decision on what you're reading about online, but really trying it out. I think another really interesting piece of information that stood out for me from your story, Maria, was that your career has really had an amazing upward trajectory, and that you've consistently been working in the finance sector, but there've been so many opportunities for you to move up, and it just reminds us of the amazing and incredible opportunities, and there's so many of them in the financial sector to do different things and to further your career. So thanks, Maria. Um, and of course, Wei, Wei, we'd love to hear your story. How did you get started in the financial sector, and what's been your career trajectory up to this point?
Well, I studied both accounting and finance for my undergrads back at U of T. So I have always been interested in business domain, right? Not really specific to accounting or finance or marketing or HR per se. I just have the idea that I want to be in business as a very high level objective for my career, right? So after I graduated, I started working as a consultant in the capital market space at Scotiabank. So it kind of aligned with my objective to be in business, just become a little bit narrower in the capital markets, right? And after a few years working as a consultant, I was thinking that I like to continue working in the capital markets domain, but I don't want to limit myself to be only in one line of business, like fixed income or one type of function. So I started switching to, be a delivery manager in a different line of business, right? Focused on security lending and collateral management. And after a few years, I switched to be a senior manager in derivative space, in derivative and structured product. And then after a few years, I moved to a director role, focusing on modernization strategy and engineering practice in the capital market space. So after 12, maybe 13 years in the capital markets domain, and I was like, maybe I should recalibrate my domain focus, kind of expand to wealth management. But again, capital markets and wealth, they're still part of the whole business world, right? So the point is that I was kind of always know what I want from a domain point of view, but I was more open to try different type of roles or functions or different lines of business to get a more well-rounded experience. So that's why I switched to wealth, after spend 13 years in the capital markets, right? So that's kind of my career trajectory and the thought process behind why did I, make those choices along the way.
Thanks, Wei. I really appreciate your story as well, and the diverse experience that people have had. And one of the things that stood out to me that was very powerful was that one of the reasons why you've succeeded and have a successful career in finance and have gotten to this place where you're at is that you're open to learning about new opportunities and new roles. So you knew, right from the bat, I want to do finance, but then you thought you're going to go in one certain direction, and then you tried it out and you were like, I'd like to find out about more. So, and it kind of went from there to there. And one of the messages I like to communicate to job seekers or folks that are interested in whatever career it is that that sense of curiosity and openness, and really folks that have an openness and curiosity, such as Wei, Michael and Maria, as all of you have tried different roles and opportunities within the financial sector, are really more likely to succeed and have careers that are both personally and professionally satisfying. And that's just how it is, right? I mean, that sense of growth. So thanks everyone. That was amazing. So now, Wei, I'd like to throw it back to you. So not to put you on the spot. Wei, I'd like to find out from you, from your experience, what are some reasons why you'd recommend working in the finance sector?
Reasons. I think there are two main reasons, I could offer that you consider as part of your decision-making process to work in the financial sector. One is that the financial sector in nature is very fast-paced. And it's changing every single day. Every second matters, every opportunity matters, right? So if you are enjoying working in a fast-paced environment, then I think that you will enjoy finance as a career, right? So second is that, like to me, like for me, I'm a very relational person. I like working with people. I like talking to people. I like getting to know people in general. So when I work in the finance or financial industry in general, I like to help my clients. I like to have that negotiation. I like to solve the problem or even conflict resolution. So I think one of the reasons you have to think about is like who you are as a person. Are you enjoying working with people and helping people, in different ways? Like if there are conflicts, are you enjoying that resolution process? I'm not saying that people enjoy conflicts, but it's just by nature, there's always conflict here and there. But are you comfortable of having that difficult conversation and getting to the middle ground? I think those are the two reasons for me that I think keep me staying in the financial sector. And of course, the pay is very decent, right? That's the reality. So I think that's what I would say are some of the factors or reasons that you could consider if financial sectors is something that you want to pursue in the long term.
Thanks, Wei. I really appreciate that. So the just to summarize what you suggested, some of the reasons why you'd recommend working in the sector is that it's fast paced. Things are always changing. So if you like that challenge instead of the routine, the mundane, everything staying the same, it might be good for you. Also in your roles, you've worked with people and had to sort of be the middle person in dealing with different kinds of conflicts and helping to help people come to an understanding and resolution with things. So if you like that, it's a good fit. And the pay, I mean, that's a huge factor when people are considering a career. And absolutely, that's certainly a great reason to work in the finance sector. Thanks, Wei. And Michael, would you like to add anything to this conversation? How about from your experience? What are some of the reasons that you'd recommend working in the sector?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Wei said. The one thing that I would say to anybody who's starting out is that when it comes to compensation, what's really important that you'd figure out is, do you want to be a cost center or do you want to be a revenue center? Because if you are a cost center, the logic of a manager is to control costs, and they will try to beat you down on compensation every step of the way. If you can figure out how you can be a revenue generator and a revenue center, then you open up yourself to exactly what Wei said, just tremendous opportunities for compensation. So be systematic about thinking which role and which path you want to go down.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think that it's certainly important to think about that because even as I've worked with folks over the years who are pursuing various industries. One of the things that I recommend is with regards to value added is on your resume and as you're marketing yourself to potential employers is talk about value added. And I know it's not quite the same as a revenue center, but it makes me think of that because you're going to put yourself in a better pay position, whatever area that is, if you're able to convince the employers that you're in a revenue, if you're helping them to generate revenue. But in particular in this industry, if you're working in revenue generation, if you're able to work in that particular, I guess, area or facet, then that's where there's more opportunity for higher salary. So thanks, Michael. Maria, I'd love to hear from you. What are some reasons that you'd recommend working in this sector in addition to the wonderful contributions that Wei and Michael provided?
Yeah, thank you, Anne. So one of the things that I would highlight is that the financial sector is one of the largest employers in Canada, and it is a growing sector. So I think we do have to be mindful of the fact that there is a little bit of cyclicality to it. You know, when there's downturns in the economy, jobs do get cut, but on balance, it is a sector that is growing and will continue to grow. So I think if someone is considering a career in the financial sector, it makes sense. Like I think there's line of sight to have, 20, 30, 40-year career in the financial sector, if you like. And then to some degree, I do echo Wei's sentiments about, relationship building, being able to talk to people. But I think the other aspect of a lot of financial jobs is that, ultimately you do spend, time looking at numbers and spreadsheets. So for me, that is actually sort of the attractive thing about the financial sector, because I do sort of get to balance, interacting with people as well as looking at numbers, which I absolutely love. So I think for someone who hates numbers, there are opportunities in the financial sector, but there are certain jobs where you will just not get away from looking at numbers.
Great. Thank you so much, Joanna. So you brought up some really great points there in terms of why you'd recommend working in the sector. And frankly, it's true. It's one of the largest employers, one of the largest sector. It's growing. Certainly when there's a downturn in the economy, employment is affected, but there's so many opportunities for those who are interested. And I appreciate what you added on to what Wei was suggesting, in addition to you're interested in working with people, but also you're interested in numbers. And so if you're a person who likes looking at numbers and spreadsheets, certainly, this could be a really good fit for you. Not, 100%. Oh, that's the number. Anyway, but it would be, a good fit, and that definitely appeals to a lot of people. So thank you so much, Maria. Next, I'm going to ask this following question. As a finance sector, as a finance sector can be competitive, how would you recommend that interested candidates get their foot in the door? This is a loaded question. I get asked this all the time. So I'd love to hear from Michael. What would you recommend that people do to get their foot in the door in this sector? I mean, we know there are lots of opportunities, but it can also be so competitive.
It's extremely competitive, but as a general recommendation, don't worry about what your first job is. Think about going to an organization that have openings and positions where you would like to be in 5 or 10 years. The hardest thing that I've come to terms with in my life is finally I'm too old. I have this knowledge when I'm too old to use it, but I will share it anyway. What I do today will have no impact on my life tomorrow. It will have all the impact in the world in 3 to 5 years. Get your foot in the door, figure out this industry is very big for accreditation. So if you saw the designations that the panelists have, Maria is a CFA charter holder. Wei has an MBA and the FRM designation. Designations are extremely important in this industry. Get your foot in the door somewhere, figure out what designations you will need as a minimum to qualify for the positions that you really want. And then what I would say is be the very best person at any job that you can possibly be. What the banks do, and they've done a very, very good job of this over the years, and both Maria and Wei work at banks. The banks have been fantastic at giving great people a clear path to better lives and better career opportunities. I just want to share this anecdote, then I promise I'll shut up. But there was a time not that long ago, which is just absolutely unbelievable, where of the big 6 banks in Canada, for 4 of the CEOs, their first jobs were as bank tellers in those banks. Now, this was some time ago, 12 or 15 years ago. This would be unheard of in the auto industry. The idea that there would be a line worker who would then go on to be the president Ford of GM, absolutely impossible.
Thank you so much, Michael. I find that this is a great response, and so the idea that the way that people get started in their careers in finance is they don't necessarily have to go into exactly what they want to do. Just get into an entry level position. There are a lot of teller positions, and you gave a great example of that, of how some CEOs were able to start out their careers like that, and be the best that you can be. And there are opportunities to work up to those positions that are more higher up. And certainly what would help you are designations that you can acquire along the way, and just be willing to make those sacrifices, because just be aware that like they will pay off in the end. And I would actually add to that, Michael. So even if you start an entry level position, and of course, please, the other panelists, if you disagree with me, please, you go ahead and do that. But even if you start out, let's say at TD, because I'm just thinking of Maria, and you get an entry level position, and you're thinking, okay, I'd like to move up, but I don't really see anything necessarily in TD, but hey, I'd like to apply to BMO. Well, the fact that you already have a bank on your resume, that might help leverage you and help get your foot in the door to other opportunities at other financial institutions. Wei, what do you think of that? Am I right? Do you agree with that statement? Do you have anything to add in terms of how to get your foot in the door in this very competitive but lucrative industry?
I agree with what Michael has mentioned, what you just mentioned as well. So I think that getting your foot in the door is really just a beginning point of your career, right? I think the key thing is more about the continuous learning and growing after you get your foot into the door. And I think the first job is not very important, right? It's more about what you can learn, what you can leverage from that point. But I do think that getting your foot into the door of the right domain is kind of important. For example, if you are interested in banking, but maybe banking related first job can really help you get to another role, your second role in banking industry as well, right? If you're interested in accounting, for example, maybe something more, accounting for maybe a better option. So I think you don't have to get exactly the position that you want right away, but the general theme, general domain that you want to kind of have, a high level idea, right? I want to be in business, or I want to be in banking, or I want to be in, in accounting form, etc. So I think have a balance in terms of the detailed function versus the high level industry environment. I think will be helpful for you to determine what kind of the first job that you want to take from there.
Thanks, Wei. So it's not just about any job within the financial sector, which is huge. It's about getting your foot in the door in the right domain, which
Yeah.
and potentially lead to that. Wei, I'm actually curious, and I'm curious from everyone. How did you get your foot in the door? I mean, we're talking about this. Okay, I understand you have to start out. You have to be willing to make these sacrifices. But how did you do it? What's your story? How did you get your first job in this industry?
For me, I think internship and co-op definitely helped me a lot. I had 3 co-op terms also in banking as well. So that kind of really gave me a better foundation when I actually looked for my first job right after graduation. So I think internship, co-op, or even volunteer experience that are relevant to your career, that will help. And also I think designations, to Michael's point, the stuff that you learn from school about finance, about accounting, the designations can definitely help you stand out as well.
Great, thanks, Wei. So you started your career, I mean, in addition to the education that you completed through an internship, through a co-op, and you suggested that through these designations, they'll really help you stand out. But Maria, what's your experience? I get the sense that you perhaps had you were able to start your career in this industry similar to how Wei did it. Did you start your career in this industry through your co-op at Waterloo?
Correct. So I think for myself, the co-op program sort of helped me get a little bit of polish while I was still in school. So once I was sort of looking for a full-time job, it was a lot easier to interview because you're sort of used to that interviewing sort of interaction. And then as well, I alluded to my first full-time job being at Barrick Gold, which was actually sort of resulted from one of my co-ops. I ended up working with someone who I had worked with during my co-op term. So that was sort of my foot in the door. The other sort of thing that I would bring up is that for the banks in particular, they have really great rotational programs. I think joining one of the rotational programs is great. You can sort of rotate through four or more different areas, spend a few months in each. I think for a new graduate or someone who's just entering the workforce, it gives you a very good perspective of where you may want to end up, as well as offering you the opportunity to sort of network with people within the organization. The other point that I would add is that U of T has a wonderful alumni network. There's so many people in the finance sector who are from U of T. And I think from a networking perspective, I would just encourage, using that connection, the U of T connection for anyone who's sort of looking to get into the sector, to leverage that network, that U of T network.
Great. Thanks so much, Maria. So,
And could I just say something
please,
about this?
please,
I
yeah,
think there's an important interjection here.
yeah.
Is that, Maria did a program, basically a genius program, because that's what actuarial science is. And
Yeah, I have to
we
agree.
graduated from what is generally understood as the best MBA school in Canada. So everyone is going to be in a bit of a different situation. So be realistic about what is on your resume in terms of your ability to compete for positions. That would be sort of advice that I would urge, because otherwise you could be waiting for moments that just don't come.
That's interesting. So be realistic. Certainly, if you're involved in an internship and co-op program, that's beneficial. Rotational programs within the banking sector, for example, help you to network. Leverage your network, whether it's because you're alumni at U of T or any others of our post-secondary schools. But also, I have another question for all of you. I guess whoever would like to jump in, but it's kind of along the lines of this. And I'm just thinking of the kinds of questions that I get from folks who are interested in getting to the sector. I've met with a lot of internationally trained professionals who have experience back in their home country, who have the education, and they want to get started in the sector, but they don't necessarily want to go back to school for 3 or 4 years to get a co-op. They might be able, they're considering volunteering, but they have basic living needs to take care of, and they don't know anyone. In the past, I'll just share, I've suggested that people consider registering with temp agencies, because a lot of the temp agencies work with banks, and they might send you, I mean, it's not ideal, but it's a way to get your foot in the door through like temping as a telemarketer, or just very entry-level positions as ways to get your foot in the door. But what if you're an internationally trained finance professional and you don't want to go back to school for 4 years? You can't afford to do it. It's just not realistic for you. What are some ways that any of you have in terms of like getting started in Canada?
I deal with this a lot with my students, and particularly with my CFA program. And what I would say is that if you have sort of an impressive body of work in another country, then don't wait for jobs to be advertised. Start reaching out proactively to departments, to individuals, to whatever. I'll share a wonderful story about that, a true story from somebody who was a former student and now is a good friend of mine. So he and his wife came from Pakistan, and he had been doing valuations in Pakistan, was very successful. His wife was a medical doctor. They agreed that what they were going to do was they were going to let her work. He was going to settle in, take care of the family. And then after a few months, he would then enter the workforce. So he did his research. He had basically all of these valuation companies lined up. And on a Monday morning, he got up at 8:30. He emailed the place where he absolutely wanted to work, reached out, just said, hey, this is my name. I'm Asad Khan and looking for valuation work, blah, blah, blah. He sent the email at around 8:30. At 8:40, he got a reply, and the person asked, are you available to speak with me tomorrow at 12 noon? He started on Wednesday. What had happened is 5 minutes before that woman received the email, her top valuator came in and quit on the spot. And she was short a person, and she needed a solution. And it was there, it presented himself. Now, the chances that any of you will have something like this is extremely unlikely. But the fact is, he didn't wait for the job to be posted. He went after it. And that is what I would strongly recommend, that if you have a high level of credentials, do research, send a letter that shows thought, a personalized letter, follow up with a telephone call after, and you just improve your chances immensely.
That's great. Thanks, Michael. I love that story. And I really, what a great reminder to us. It's not about waiting for the opportunity to fall in your lap, waiting for that right posting to apply to, because it's likely they've already made their decision anyway, because something like 90% of jobs are not advertised, and the ones that are out there, again, they've probably already decided and they hire internally. But make it happen. Be proactive, put yourself out there. And as an internationally trained professional, you have so much to offer. This thing about Canadian work experience, no, you don't actually. We need your specialized experience, your international experience that really adds a lot of value to this industry. Maria or Wei, would you like to add to this conversation in terms of, if you're an internationally trained finance professional, you're new to Canada, you don't want to go back to school for 3 or 4 years to do a co-op. What are some ways that you can get your foot in the door in this industry, in Canada anyway?
Yeah, so I have a couple of things to add. So I would say that in general, at least at the banks, they're very diverse employers. So I think they don't necessarily hold against you the fact that you don't have Canadian experience. I've worked with plenty of internationally trained individuals who have been very successful in their careers at TD. The other aspect that I would add is that there are sort of like differences in the way that things are done in various countries. So if you have a resume and a cover letter, make sure you talk to someone to make sure that, if there's any low hanging fruit, like if there's, like a spelling mistake or a grammatical mistake in your CV and your cover letter, that you sort of are able to sort of edit it out, because that'll increase your chances. And then ultimately, as an international, you may not have the network in Canada, but you do have the skills. And ultimately, I think it's a numbers game. So even if you have to apply to 200 positions, whereas, someone who's Canadian based may have to apply to 100, like just keep on applying until you get your foot in the door. Just don't give up, because it'll happen eventually.
Thanks, Maria. And you pointed it out, some very very vital information. So one of the things is you recognize that this industry is very diverse, and your colleagues aren't necessarily just from Canada; they're from all over the world, and that's a value added benefit to this industry. And another point that you suggested was that it's not just about that your resume and your CV, you have to make sure that before you put it out there that it's in the best possible shape that it can be in, because something as minor as a spelling mistake or some kind of a typo that you may not have noticed will put you in the no pile, because they have to make these decisions. And so maybe get some support from career services, an Employment Ontario provider. If there's someone in your professional network or someone that you can trust, you can really you trust their opinion, get them to read over the resume, because you might have done it 1,000 times and run it so many times that you may have missed something. And last but not least, it's a numbers game. So that absolutely, I agree with that. And don't give up. Keep up using that effective resume and cover letter. Continue to network and keep applying to the jobs, because it does happen. And Maria, if I can just add quickly, because I am aware, I would love to hear what Wei has to say. I've had folks who say to me, "Anne, can you guarantee that I'll find a job? Like, will I find a job?" And I've often said to folks, well, I'll tell you, the number one way that people find work is that they don't give up. I mean, there are other factors, I realize that, but that's a huge part of the equation. If you give up, it's not going to happen for you. But if you keep putting yourself out there, chatting with people, networking, attending amazing panels like this, working on your resume, applying to jobs, it will happen for you eventually. We don't, no one knows how, where, or when, but it will happen for you. So thanks for that, Maria. Wei, would you like to add anything to this conversation? How can an internationally trained finance professional break into this market in Canada?
I think Michael and Maria have already covered a lot, networking, conference, keep applying for jobs, right? Being proactive. I think a couple of things that I want to add onto it is that you also have to focus on what you can bring to the table as well. Right? Not just about, hey, are you looking for someone? Are you looking for, a candidate, like what you actually can bring to the table and present yourself as a professional, right? Because the context that you already have tons of experience, you're very good at communication, you have, you know, a bunch of designation already, then present yourself as a professional rather than a, you know, new grads, right? And what the value that you can actually bring to the hiring manager or to the organization. So I think focus on the elevator pitch or whatever the conversation that you need to get people's attention, make sure that it's clear, it's to the point, and it's sincere. I think that's important, right? A lot of people may keep applying for a job or keep going to network, but they don't have a clear introduction about themselves, right? So that may make the process not as productive as it should have been, right? So I think that's a couple of things that I want to add on to, you know, our discussion.
Thanks, Wei. You brought up some very important points as well. So in addition to putting yourself out there and not giving up, it's about being able to market yourself effectively and being able to identify your strengths and your value added, because it's one thing to have it on paper, all the amazing things that you've accomplished, but it's another thing to be able to recognize your strengths and to market them, show value added. And just a little plug because this is relevant. As I mentioned, at Blueprint Career Services, we do offer Clifton Strengths, which is an assessment identifying your top 5 strengths, and then we work together to help you to market those to employers. Precisely what Wei said. And along with, you know, once you've identified your strengths, practice your elevator pitch. Be able to market yourself effectively within 3 minutes, right? Because people don't have time, and you never know, you might be at a party or some kind of a social function, another social function, or in an elevator, what the heck, with someone who works in a sector or in a job that you'd be interested in. You have to be able to, in that quick amount of time, be able to effectively market yourself and not just say, you know, really, you know, hone it down. And I would encourage folks to practice, if you're not sure, practice your elevator pitch with, again, either a career professional such as myself, with friends or that can provide you with the feedback, people in your network, because the better you have that down, the more effective the product is going to be, and the faster you're going to get to your goal. So thank you for that, Wade. This has just been such a great discussion. I'm aware that we have about 10 minutes. I'm going to ask a few more questions, not a few minutes, a few more questions. I'm kind of going to be backtracking. We've talked about all of the wonderful things that the finance sector has to offer candidates, and opportunities, and growth and salary. And it's such a large sector, but this is our industry insights panel, and there's 3 of you, and I really want to kind of get down to the nitty gritty as well. It's not easy in every sector. Every sector has their challenges, and so I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the challenges of working in the finance sector? I'm not sure how to throw it out to, but anyone who'd like to start out first? Would
I
anyone
can
like to
start.
start? Okay,
I
please,
can.
Maria.
Oh, Wei. Oh, Wei. You go first. Go ahead, Wei.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think in terms of the challenges, I think that one thing that comes to my mind is that at least from my experience, my own experience and perspective, is that you have to be able to take the ownership of your work and take the responsibility of the potential consequences of the decision that you have to make, right? Especially when you get to senior positions, often you may not have all the information when you have to make that decision at that point of time, and you have to be able to, you know, walk into the room, take your lumps, even though, you know, the result is not as you expected, right? But you have to be able to like assess it and learn from it. The point is that you have to be decisive, right? But decisive to the point that you have to have all the pros and cons as much as you can to assess before make that decision, right? I think that's one of the challenges that I have throughout my career. And the second one would be very comfortable of having difficult conversations, whether that you may have to let someone go for whatever reason, or that you may have to propose a different perspective that from your manager, from most of the people on your team. You have to be comfortable of having that difficult conversation and move forward. So I think those are the two things I find is challenging from my perspective. And I think it takes time and experience to get to the point that, okay, this just, one of the things I have to deal with, but it takes some time to get there.
Yes, those certainly sound like quite the challenges way. So I can only imagine what it would be like in the finance sector and having to make these decisions and feel confident about them and be very very decisive about it. And also those difficult conversations, you have to be prepared to have those difficult conversations with people, whether it's letting them go or other difficult conversations. But on the bright, but just as a reassurance, even though these might be difficult for you, um, it takes practice, it takes time. But
Mm.
I think if it's the right fit, you'll get there. And these are skills like anything else. So thanks,
Yeah.
Wei. Maria, what do you think are some of the challenges working in this sector from your
Yeah,
perspective?
so first of all, I just wanted to echo Wei's point about having to make decisions without having all the information. It happens all the time within my team as well. And then more specifically to the capital market side, it is a very stressful type of role. It was definitely the case when I was working within research, and it's even more so the case now that I'm in investment management. In investment management, we're managing almost $100 billion worth of assets, and
Wow.
making a wrong decision means that someone else might have a little bit less to retire with at the end of the day. And then as well, like as things sort of move in the markets, things can change very quickly. Liquidity can dry up in the markets. Like you might want to do something, but you won't be able to because the liquidity dries up. So I think there's a lot of stressful points, and then also like sometimes a small error can mean many dollars of many dollars lost. So I think that sort of can amplify the stress sometimes. So I think the capital markets is definitely not for the faint of heart, but it is a very exciting part of the industry.
Yeah, it really does sound exciting, Maria. And I can only imagine the kind of stress that would be involved being responsible for billions of dollars. And then if something goes a little wrong, people could potentially lose some of their retirement. So yeah, that's certainly an important challenge to make note of. But if you're a person that thrives in those in that kind of excitement and can handle being responsible for so much, I definitely I think it'd be a great fit for you. And yep, amazing. Thanks, Maria. And Michael, what's your perspective? What are some of the challenges that you've identified working in this sector?
Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask just Maria and Wei, what are your typical hours? Like when do you come in the morning and when do you leave generally? Maria, I'd start with Maria.
Yeah, so typically I'm here like let's say 8:30 till 5:30, but there's many days where I don't step away for lunch because I get sort of caught up in something. And then there are periods where things sort of get busier and I am working in the evenings as well here or there, but I would say that's probably like 25% of the time.
Okay, and Wei, what would be your typical work day?
When I was in capital markets, my day was like start from like 6 a.m. Until maybe 4:30 p.m. because the market starts earlier and close earlier. After I moved to Wells, it's more like 8:30 to 5 or 6 p.m. But similar to Maria, like almost no time to grab lunch or even go to the bathroom. It's just constantly meeting the timeline or deadlines. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges. And what I would say to anybody who wants to go into capital markets, just be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. Many
Yeah.
times I hear students want to go, for example, into investment banking, and I would not wish that career on my worst enemy. So just have your eyes wide open about what sounds glamorous, because at the end of the day, you could be well compensated, you could make a very reasonable living, and you can have time to sort of live your life outside of work. that's what I would say is what I would identify as the primary challenge of capital markets is that because you're getting the compensation you are getting, much more is expected of you than if you're, for example, doing what I'm doing now, and that's teaching school.
Yeah, I really appreciate you brought that up, Michael. So certainly the hours, if you're in capital markets, it's just expected that you're doing overtime and that you may not have time to take breaks. And actually, I remember I had a friend who was working way back when in capital markets, and it was unbelievable what she told me. I just couldn't imagine going through a day without taking lunch. Like, are you serious? And she said no one takes lunch. They quickly eat something at their desk, and it was expected to stay late. They were expected to stay late. It was just sort of part of the norm. But when you get paid those kind of salaries, it's just normal. So if that doesn't match your ideal in terms of work-life balance, maybe this particular area of finance and the capital markets, it wouldn't be a good fit for you. So thanks, Michael.
Well, but you can choose your roles. My point here is that you could, for example, carve out a very successful career in private wealth management, where you could, if you did it right, you could manage your life so you're doing it 40 hours a week. But just be for the people who are listening, just be aware of what the reality is for those positions that you're heading to. Maria, I would guess that when you were doing equity research, when it was earnings season, I'm guessing you were working like 12 hours a day for like 3 weeks in a row. Is that fair, Maria?
There were some overnights in the office, correct? And I
Wow.
actually have done an investment banking internship, and it was horrible. It was
Yes.
horrendous.
Yeah, see, the problem is, and again, the problem is nobody ever gets on panels like this and talks honestly to people. It really is.
Yeah,
But you got to know. You got to
yeah, I
know
know.
this is the cost of doing business if you want to get into some of these sectors.
Yeah. And Michael, again, I really appreciate this because yeah, I hope to provide, real information here, not just the sunny side of things, but this is just the reality. And just if you go into this sector, be careful what you choose because there are some areas of finance where, again, you're going to be doing a lot of overtime hours. You're going to be compensated well. You're doing a lot of overtime hours. So I appreciate that honesty. It's very important. The last question I'm going to ask everyone, and then we'll throw it to the floor and get questions from our participants. If anyone has questions, you can put them in the chat now, or you can wait. But we will be spending some time answering questions from our chat. So the final question I have is, what is some final advice that you'd give to candidates who are interested in pursuing careers in the finance sector? Would anyone like to answer this first? Wei. Wei, what are some final thoughts that you have for advice for people who are interested in this sector?
I think that every decision or every action in life or in career has pros and cons, right? The way that I process my decision-making process is that as long as the pros outweigh the cons, it's a potential option that I can take, right? I think just try not to take something that it have to be 100% perfect. Otherwise, I'm not going to go ahead with it. So I think just having that pros and cons mindset, it helps you in a long way. And second is that I think that it's important to get to know yourself a little bit better. It helps a lot in career from all different perspectives because when you know yourself better, you know why you have certain emotions, working long hours, or having a difficult conversation, or just have to make a tough decision. Like it's better for you to know yourself, and it helps you manage certain situations come along the career journey. And also you kind of know your strengths and weakness, right? Then you can have the opportunity to maximize your strengths further and try to kind of manage your weakness better, right? So I think getting to know yourself is very important in career management, just from my personal experience.
Great, thanks, Wei. So some final advice that you have for people is get to know yourself, get to know your strengths, but but also your weaknesses and how to manage those in this industry. And when you're making decisions with regards to next steps in your career, maybe consider pros and cons. And if and look at that and think and just analyzing, if the pros outweigh the cons, and go for it. If the cons outweigh the pros, maybe it's not a good fit. Thanks, Wei. Michael, I'd like to hear your final thoughts on some advice that you might give folks who are interested in the working in the financial sector.
I would say if somebody has a clear vision about what they want to do, like what the particular role is or what the particular department or division is, try to get the accreditation that you need sooner rather than later, like get that out of the way. And then what I would say is get your foot in the door in any organization and be the absolute best, whether it's a bank teller or back office person or you name it that they've ever seen, because the large banks will definitely reward you. That is one thing that I can absolutely say. I don't know there's not one case of anybody who I've ever met who deserved to succeed but didn't succeed in one of the large banks.
Thanks, Michael. That was great. So you suggested that once you have a clear vision of where you'd like to go, get that accreditation right away. Don't wait. And the other thing again is get your foot in the door. Once you get your foot in the door, whatever you're doing, be the best at that job that you can be. And you have seen from personal experience that when you are the best that you can be at that job, that you will move ahead. So that's wonderful. Maria, I'd love to hear your final thoughts on some advice you might give someone who's interested in the finance sector.
Yeah, I guess my final piece of advice would be that over preparation is underrated. So let's say that you're meeting with somebody for a coffee networking chat, or you have your first interview. If you over prepare, you will shine above and beyond everybody else. Like you will sort of, come across better in the interview. If you're meeting with somebody for a coffee chat, if you come and ask intelligent questions, I think it will be appreciated and it may make a positive impression that will ultimately open up the door to something. So, and I think once you're sort of in a particular position, if you're sort of over prepared, you do your research, you do extra legwork, it's going to be noticed and you will be able to sort of move up more easily within an organization.
And great advice. So over prepare, right? Research. I'm always telling people that when they go into an interview, when they go into a network opportunity, it will help you stand out, and it will demonstrate an interest, the fact that you're hardworking, that you know how to prepare, prepared, you've done your research, that this is something that you're really invested in. And also it shows that you're not there to waste the person's time, right? So as you're networking with folks in the finance industry, I mean, it's been very clear that, I mean, everyone's busy, but I mean, you folks are very busy professionals. If you had someone who wanted to network with you and you were kind enough to give them 30 minutes of your very valuable time and they have no idea what to say, that's going to be a problem. It's going to turn you off, and it's inconsiderate, and it will affect your opportunity to succeed in this career. But also when you're actually at the job, over prepare. It will help make you shine. And I think that that's wonderful, Maria. Thank you so much. Well, that ends our moderated question portion of the panel. Now we'll go on to our chat. So I'm going to take a look at, we have a question here from one of our participants, and I'm going to throw it out to you. And again, please do put your questions in the chat. This is an amazing opportunity, a rare opportunity to sit down with these incredible finance professionals and get the lowdown of things, like really find out, like burning questions. You really want to find out something about finance? Here they are. So please put your answers, your questions in there. So the question from Apeksha, and thank you for posting this, Apeksha. They want to know, how do you build a resume when you don't have any experience? So would anyone like to answer this?
I think what she's referring to is no work experience. So the standard answer is you sort of put a profile together, and then you'll talk about, your education, and then any other extracurricular or activities, anything that you've ever done, like volunteer or whatever. All you can do is tell your story. But what I would say is, why aren't you working right now on something that'll build your resume? Get a part-time job somewhere. So you can start to move that process forward.
Yes, absolutely. So there's always a way to get to get started. Get a part-time job and perhaps do some relevant education and training. And all of that can contribute to your resume. A lot of times people think that they downplay all of that, you know, their volunteer experience, their part-time work experience, but there's always a way to sort of spin it so that it you can market yourself for particular positions. It's just a matter of connecting with the right people and getting that support and really focus on transferable skills. And, you know, resumes aren't everything. I mean, we discussed this as certainly a tool and it's very important that it's in 100 tip top shape, but they aren't everything. If you're talking about accessing the hidden job market, resumes are not as important. So thanks for that, Michael. And then does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to that, or would you like to the next question? It's really up to you.
You can also, you know, talk about the project-based, coursework on your resume as well, right? Like if you are taking a course that has like a 40% project that involve, building a business plan or presentation, etc., that's a great experience to articulate or elaborate a bit more on your resume too, right? You can even put the links there, project delivery, deliverable from which course. That could be a way to fill up your resume too. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, Wei, and that's such great advice. And I've actually suggested this to some of the students that I've been working with over the years, is that adding in that section about special projects because those do count and get into some details. That is definitely something that you can market to employers. It will help you to stand out, and it's something that oftentimes students don't even think of, but it will really help you go a long way. Thanks, Wei. Maria, do you have any suggestions or advice?
I guess what I would sort of add is that, if you're not working right now, if you've sort of finished schooling, signing up for courses, like for example, whether it's like a CSI course or signing up for the CFA exams and sort of showing that you're interested in a particular area, I think that could be helpful as well and sort of differentiate you from some other candidates.
Yes, definitely. So taking those courses, showing that you're of a vested interest in in this particular industry will help you stand out. And I would actually like to add to that, Maria, um, taking courses through continuing education, such as the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies. Oftentimes, just like our courses, they're taught by industry experts, Michael. Um, who are directly working in those industries. So in addition to putting, you know, the XYZ course that is relevant to that particular industry, you're being taught by people who are actually working in the industries. And so you can connect with them and that's part of your network and accessing the hidden job market. So absolutely. Thanks, Maria. So we have a few other questions in the chat. I'm going to, if Apeksha, I'm going to move on to another few questions here just to give everyone a chance. We'll go back to your question. And I'll send it to the panelists via email, and we'll post a response on our site. But for now, we have a question from William. William, thanks for asking this question. Let's say we don't have a perfect idea of an end goal career. Would it still be a good idea to obtain accreditation just for the chance to branch out into that field? Anyone would like to answer this particular question?
Well, it sort of depends on the accreditation and the amount of time and everything else. So I would say that for people who are looking to start in the financial services industry, you really can't go too wrong by taking the Canadian Securities course. The time commitment is not onerous. Probably if you study 4 to 6 months, and we also have a course through continuous studies in that. If you study 4 to 6 months, that's probably, for like 10 hours a week, that's probably going to be enough. But, before you would embark on something like, and I think Marie would agree with this, like the CFA journey, you better have a pretty clear indication that this is where you want to go. Maria, is that fair?
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's just sort of the input in terms of effort versus the potential payoff. And if you're planning to move to a different industry a year down the road, it's not worth the amount of work for sure.
Great. So the suggestion from that was in terms of whether or not you decide to take a particular accreditation, you have to, well, like what I was saying, kind of weigh the pros and the cons. You know, is it worth it taking something like the Canadian Securities course if I'm spending this much amount of money and it's, from what I understand, it's very, very challenging. It takes a lot of studying to pass. If I'm not even sure if I want to go into that, maybe I should do something like take a course instead where there's not as much commitment, but at least it elevates my resume. Wade, did you have anything to add to this conversation, to add to this question?
Mm, and I think also before you taking any designation or certification, talk to the people who already have it,
Hmm.
right? To see if that actually helps in what way, so that you can get more perspective before you actually start, studying and investing your time and energy. But in general, I think that you have to invest time and efforts in learning, right? Like I think is something that you can't avoid, because sometimes I have students ask me like, do I have to do this? Do I have to take this? Do I have to... I was like, if you don't do those, what other option do you have? While you were applying for the job or waiting for someone, reach out to you potentially. So I think just having that clarity that there always have to be time and efforts investment before you can achieve something that you want in life, right? I think having that mindset, it helps you through the learning process too, I think.
Yes, absolutely. That was wonderful advice, and certainly I agree with you every step of the way with that. And part of what you started with was talk to people who are actually doing that certification, who've done that accreditation,
Yeah.
and find out from them. And I'm always suggesting this to folks, talk to people who are actually doing this, who whatever career, who've done these certifications, to find, okay, is this worth it? What is it like? But also I think you brought another very important point, which is when you're considering whether or not I should go back to school, take an accreditation, and additional education, should I invest? It's always worth it, because if you want to get to where you want to go, it's just required. And obviously this is not this is a session about the finance sector, but I think about my own career and my pursuit of education, and how it's really helped me to succeed and have a career that's both personally and professionally satisfying. And so I'd recommend any kind of education, accreditation, of course, do your research, but as a means to help your career. And it never ends. Like I'm sure that all of you are still engaged in some kind of training, or if not this second, recently, because this is how we learn, this is how we grow, and this is how we further our career. So thanks for that. I know I've been talking a lot. And I'm just aware, oh, we're good for time. Okay. So another question that we have, let me just see here, from Shreyas is, and thank you for posting, Shreyas. How do you transition from coffee chat to an interview? That's a good question. Being frank, should you be frank, or should you continue to follow up to see if there is an opening? So I really appreciate this question. I guess it's the idea that, okay, we've been talking about having these, networking sessions, you have a coffee chat, but how do you move those forward to having them potentially tell you about a job opportunity, inviting you for an interview? How do you make that transition? Because it can be really tricky. Does anyone have any feedback on this very, very important question?
I can take a first. So I think when you get a coffee chat with someone, I think don't force it. By the third time when I meet the person, I have to make sure that it's more than a coffee chat. Like don't force it, because sometimes there are many factors that there just isn't anything come up, right? That's number one. Second is that when you follow up after a first coffee chat, you don't just follow up, say, hey, I'm just following up to see if there are any openings. I think it will be good to provide some update about yourself, right? I say after 3 weeks, I had a coffee chat with Michael and I want to follow up with him. I will be like, hey, Michael, just thought you would like to know, I just cleared my CFA level 1, and it was great experience on my journey for level 2. I want to let you know, and if there anything, come up at your end, happy to have a follow-up conversation. Like, let people know what additional values continue growing on your side, make that follow-up much more meaningful rather than just like, hey Michael, anything new, right? So I think that's what I would say. Yeah.
Thanks, Wei. And I
And
agree
sorry,
with you.
Michael, I'm kind of using you as an example of this story.
I was clapping because look at this is what I think you do on the coffee
Yeah,
chat.
let's hear it.
I heard the story years ago from a guy who markets. He was actually on the TV show Dragon's Den, and he actually got financed by I think it was the guy who's the ex-cop. Anyway, so what he does is he markets himself to high school principals. So he markets his service to high school principals. And what he does is he gets to know the high school principal and what their interest is. So let's say that this guy is really, really passionate about downhill skiing. What he'll do is he'll say, I just saw the most, and he has a team of people who are finding this for him. I just saw this most amazing YouTube on a video on YouTube about downhill skiing. I just had to share it with you. So he's always keeping those people because he's doing this every few months. And it's a beautiful, subtle way to stay on someone's radar because they know why you're sending the resume. They know why they're sending the video. But it's just sort of the unspoken way of keeping up to date, making people realize that you're still there. If you're doing a coffee chat, never ask anybody directly for work. Do you know of any openings? Do you know any organizations who are hiring right now? Not your department, but any organizations. What would you do if you were me? Just keep it open-ended. Don't ever put pressure on them directly, and just keep all of these things open, because if they like you and it's meant to be, they will refer you.
Absolutely agreed.
Sorry, we didn't to interrupt too. And I agree too. It's kind of like a subtle art. Like I discuss this with job seekers who I talk about, coffee chats with, and don't ever go into the situation expecting a job or hope with the hopes that you'll get an interview. That's not what these coffee chats are actually about, Shreyas. They are about providing opportunity to listen to their story, gather information, have the opportunity to share your story, and if they invite you to interview for a potential position, that's great. If they don't, that's okay. This is still valuable, but if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, like you were saying, Michael. And I also love, oh, there were several points here, and then Wei mentioned a point too. Oh, wow, it's just so much amazing information here. The the subtle ways of following up. And so Michael suggested that someone who was successful in the Dragon's Den with one of the candidates, or I guess salespeople, one of the, not the dragons, but one of the
Well, he was a
candidates.
contestant. He was the guy looking for money.
Right, that's a contestant. The contestant's team follows up with a particular network contact, the high school principal, sorry, the principal, and they find something they're interested in, and they send that person, an article on cars or something like that, and it's just sort of a way to keep their interest. And I've actually suggested to job seekers when they're networking, if you can find some kind of a common ground, something outside of work, like if you do your research, or if you happen to be in their office, like you're in my office, not really my office, but oh, you like flowers. I don't, I just, oh, I love flowers too. Or I can see you, just sort of getting out. It's like, you like flowers too. Oh, that sort of already endears you. So I think that's a subtle way to do that. And I love it. And Wei, I also appreciate the importance of following up with these coffee chat folks. Just saying, not just saying, hi, I'm looking for a job. Thanks. No, it's more like, hi, it was great chatting with you. Just wanted to let you know some exciting news. I completed my Canadian Securities course and I passed it with flying colors. So that's how you make these exchanges, these coffee chats meaningful. And if there are opportunities to interview, they'll come to you through these coffee chats, but don't force them. Maria, what are your thoughts about this? Do you have anything to add to this amazing conversation we're having?
Yeah, so I think the other thing that I would sort of add about coffee chats is that if you see a position posted that is of interest to you, if you do your research, like you can sort of try to reach out to someone within that team and meet informally for a coffee chat. That's sort of a way to meet someone from the team and potentially get your foot in the door. So that's sort of the other way that I would use coffee chats. But once again, I think it's important to sort of keep it low pressure, because ultimately that person does not owe you anything, but it is a way to sort of meet and greet them in advance of, potential interview process.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Maria. I
Well,
like this
I've got, I'm
approach.
sorry, I've got
Yeah,
one other
please, please, please.
critical thing to add about coffee chats.
Yes.
Pick up the tab.
Yes, that's a good one.
Pick up the tab. Now, what'll happen very frequently is the person who's more senior will say, no, it's on me, because they know the situation, whatever,
Mhm.
but always offer to pick up the tab. I've had people do coffee chats and they want to pay for theirs and have me, it doesn't make a great impression.
That's a good one. It's interesting. There's these subtle kind of intricacies or nonverbal kind of ways to communicate that really have a big impact on the kind of interactions that you're making and the effectiveness of these coffee chats. And Maria suggested that you can kind of do it reverse. So instead of scheduling time to speak to someone like Maria who's doing something that you'd like to do, perhaps you're come across a job posting in the area to TD that Maria's working. I keep referring to Maria. And then you find out, okay, she's here. This person is working in this team. I'm going to connect with her, find out more about this role, maybe get some tips and tricks as to what's not on the posting, and that will really strengthen my application. Now, if you're lucky, Maria will be part of the hiring committee, or she'll know someone directly who's involved with the hiring committee. And if she likes you, or if it's meant to be, because kind of takes the pressure off, she might offer to promote, like to let them know, to let the hiring folks know about this amazing person because you've broken the ice, and that helps you stand out because the hiring process is really tough, and most people hire folks that they know or have direct recommendations, because it's one thing to have a great resume and interview, but it's another thing when you start, like, it's really difficult. And if they hire wrong, it can mess up everything, cost time and money. So, Maria, that's really great advice. And Michael, wonderful advice too. Pick up the tab, everyone. Pick up the tab. Oh, and I have something else that goes along the lines of what Michael said. I would suggest, and yes, I've had arguments, that if you're networking with someone or if you're at an interview and they offer you something such as water, say yes. I was told that that's a nonverbal way to sort of engage them with you and bring you closer. But I've had people say, no, you shouldn't do that. What if you spill the water? But anyway, I would recommend you do that because it's a nonverbal sort of welcoming kind of interaction. So I'm just aware of the time. We have time for one last question. I'm just going to read. This came in from, I guess, the private chat. So I'm just going to read this off. The question is, will foreign work experience in the financial sector be an advantage when you're trying to find a job in the Canadian financial industry? Or should we start from entry level? I'd love to know from the industry experts. That's a great question. Who'd like to start with this one? And this will be our last question. We should have more time.
I think we sort of covered that before.
We
Like, I
kind
think
of
that's,
did.
yeah, it's a qualified, it depends.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's very, very difficult to generalize unless we know what the particular role is.
I guess my question, Michael, because I thought at first, okay, this is so similar, but because I've dealt with this when I've been working with internationally trained professionals who are looking to get in particular industry, like if they had, let's say, for example, a high level position in finance outside of Canada, should they be aiming for something around that kind of a scale in Canada, or should they be starting from the bottom? We know that internationally trained professionals have a lot to bring to these roles in the finance sector. In Canada, there are lots of opportunities, but realistically speaking, I guess, like, and this is a question I've been asked, should folks who have that high level experience, do they need to start from the bottom in Canada, or should they just go for these positions that really more align with what they did in their home country? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, they can always try and find out. I think they'll know in a relatively short period of time whether that's going to be meant to be. But I think that I think that most employers would be very, very skeptical about what somebody is showing from international experience from a country where they have no contacts, where they probably have a where it's difficult to follow up about, was this person really legit? Like, did they really do that? I know that if I was coming to another country, I would lie through my teeth on my resume to get a good job.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't everyone else think like that? That's my instinct.
That's interesting. Anyone else have something to contribute? This is very interesting.
I'll just add one point. Ultimately, you're the one who controls the narrative. So I
Yes.
think it's up to you to sort of build a story that makes a case for how your skills are transferable to a different country and to a different role, and how they will be net additive to that organization.
Thanks, Maria. So it's really up to you in terms of your narrative, how you present yourself, and how you control that, how you market yourself. But like Michael said too, you have to consider that if you're working a high-end role in your country of origin, then you try for something similar of that caliber in Canada, and that employer doesn't know anyone in your home country in that particular organization, like they might be skeptical and they might think this person could lie because they can. So that's things to consider. Wei, did you have anything to contribute here in this wonderful conversation?
Yeah, and I think depends on the organization as well, right? That's why I think, to Michael's earlier point, let's say if larger banks, like well-known organization, let's say if you worked in a different country, but for JP Morgan, I think the narrative, like it'll be a completely different context, and you worked in an organization as a CEO, but people don't really know that organization much, right? So it depends on the company that you worked for, how well known to people internationally, right? And that kind of contribute to the narrative that you can build out to define your value, what you can bring to the table. If you were, a VP of JP Morgan in a different country, I would say try a similar level role in Canada, right? Like it doesn't make sense to start as an analyst in banking here if you had that experience already to that level in a different country. So it really depends on the context, I would say. Yeah.
And you're also bringing a very good point to the table. And I remember working with a particular internationally trained professional from the finance sector who worked with a reputable, a well-known financial institution in his home country, and he was able to secure employment that was very similar to what he did in his home country because it was the same company except in Canada, and it was obviously very reputable and well known, and that's how he did it. So absolutely, you make a very good point. So there are lots to consider. So I can see that we have about a minute left. But for those questions that haven't been answered in the chat, and I think that there's only one, but if you have any further questions, you can put them in the chat. I will be sharing them with our panelists, and we'll be working on some responses for you and sharing it on our website. And with that, it's 1:30. So I'd like to thank our amazing panelists for being here today. We really appreciate this engaging and informative conversation that we've had. Maria Bogusz, Wei Yang, and Michael Holinka. We've learned so much from you today, and it's just been such a pleasure to have you all provide such invaluable information that's very hard to access unless you're in the know. So thank you so much for everything. And thank you, participants, for being with us today. I appreciate that you stayed on, that you stayed on board and took the time out of your busy days, I'm sure, to learn more about the financial sector. And I would encourage all of you to check out Blueprint Career Services, our additional offerings and how they can help you move forward with your career. So thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day. Hope you enjoy the weather, sunshine. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.